So thank you very much for the half-filled audience and half-filled at least one side. I got a great panel here. Really, really happy to be here. We got 45 minutes. What we're going to try and do is finish our monologues in 35, so we get some quality 10 minutes of dialogue time. Everybody knows that the relationship between publishers and brands has always been quite interesting and intriguing. In the old world, publishers created content. Consumers, people like us, took the, used and consumed that content, and brands wrote on the content to get to people like us, right? And the old world is no more. I was reminded by somebody a couple of days ago that about 5 years ago, this time, February 2007, Twitter was only 4 months old. Facebook was just getting out of the student community to the broader world. 5 years, huh? So that's how short it takes for our world to change. And now we have seen how the content is moving, not completely moved, from the publisher control or the classical publisher control to people like us, which is why we heard terms like UGC, and obviously the kings of UGC would be talking here today, Google. And then now the new thought of, should brands now turn into content owners and platform owners and publishers? Quite fascinating if you think about it, right? So what we're going to do is today talk about 2 or 3 specific things. We are all aware that the brand's fascination with ownership of content began maybe 80 years ago when the word soap opera was created. Business-to-business brands like McKinsey created content that they keep selling to thousands and tens of thousands of people around the world for $100 a year, called McKinsey Quarterly in 1964. That's like 70 years, or 50 years. Big companies like L'Oreal, Ralph Lauren, and many others who are not here have created content and own them. In the world of apps, many brands, as we know, are creating applications and hosting them on your devices so that they could pipe their content to you and they'd love to use them. So that's a very, very fascinating world out there. What we're going to today discuss is 2 things broadly. The why and what, right? So why is it so important for brands to embrace content in today's world? And what are marketers, particularly in India, doing to embrace that world, right? So that's the monologue from me. What I'm going to do now is request each of the panelists, starting from my left, the 2 marketers sitting right here, Wasim and Atit, to give their introductory comments in about 2 to 3 minutes. And then after a round, we'll come back to discuss the issues at hand. Wasim.
Thanks, Ravi. Good afternoon, everybody. I know we are sitting between you and lunch, so we'll try and rush it up as soon as possible. You asked Ravi why. Here is a simple reason why. And I requested the team to do a little bit of search. Of the 235 million views for Coca-Cola content on YouTube in India, only 5% is instigated by Coca-Cola. The rest is all instigated by the consumers. If that isn't a big enough reason to start owning and managing and running your messages on your own, then I don't think anything else would be. So here it is, it's reality, and it's not about creative, it's not about TV ads, it's not about any ads anymore. It's about your message. It needs to go out there in any form, any shape that you need it, and you got to control the dialogue as much as possible. That's the reason why for us.
Hi, good afternoon. So I agree with what Wasim said, because content is what we create, content is what we circulate, and content is what gets consumed. So content can be in any form. So an outdoor unit is also content from an advertiser's point of view. A video is also a content, but the challenge is who is going to create that content. As marketers, we know best to sell and market products. And for us, it's soaps and shampoos. So we know best how to market and sell soaps and shampoos. Can we create content? From a marketing perspective, yes, everything which is creating more engagement and interactivity is content, so we should create content. But do we have the expertise? Probably not. So the big challenge is marketers shouldn't start creating content. They should co-create content with the publishers and create more engagement and interactivity for the respective brands.
Thank you so much. I have a more fundamental question to ask here. What is content? I think that's probably the starting point. To me, content is information, content is entertainment, content is problem solving. So if you're looking for which LCD TV to buy, that is information. When you see an ad of that, that is content for you. When I want to entertain myself, where do I go? I go to Coke Studio. So that is entertainment for me. If I want to learn how to unbox my latest smartphone, and if I go and watch a video of that, that is problem solving. So all of that is content. And as a marketer, as a business owner, now I need to decide for my product, what is best. So till we are doing that, I think we are doing well. And to me, like I was discussing with Ravi, marketing is content today. And that is what we would like to discuss as we go along.
Can I just run the AV so that just gives a context?
Products don't do it. Passions do. And passions are constantly evolving beyond cricket and films. Independent music, adventure, sport, travel. It's on their list. Give them something they love, and they will love you back. Coca-Cola builds immense brand love through its independent music platform, Co-Studio and MTV. Axe and MTV break all rules of marketing with Findo's a virtual movement. Stuntmania, a partnership between Pulsar and MTV, has grown stunt biking into a recognized sport in the country. Engage, educate, excite. The game is moving from recall to affinity. The movement has begun. Because content is the #1 social currency. And that's why brands are becoming publishers.
So, I play many roles. The way I see it, I joined the media industry about 6.5, 7 years back, and at that time the mantra was content is king from a broadcaster's point of view. No matter what you bring to the table in terms of marketing, in terms of distribution, content is going to make the difference between success and failure. But I think as the world has evolved, for young people especially, it's about who has that SMS joke first, who's seen that video first, who knows about a show first, and that determines how cool you are. There's no fun in forwarding a joke when 100,000 people have already seen it. But if I'm in that virgin group that is part of the originator set, that makes me really cool. So when I go to my college campus and I'm sitting in the canteen and I show somebody my phone and I'm the first guy to get a message, that really creates my social hierarchy. The minute that has happened, I think content has then become interesting. And content, like Nikhil said, to me is as much as a tweet, to an SMS joke, to a full-fledged 1-hour show, to a film. So I think as content becomes, increasingly the cool factor for young people, brands are going to be, looking at that as a platform to connect. But the counterpoint to that is, I think it also depends on the brand life cycle in which the stage of a brand is. So I think if you're launching, then maybe the whole objective is just to go for recall. But I think, the people here at least are representing very evolved brands, and hence, for them creating content is important. So I think I wouldn't say it's blanket that every brand needs to be a publisher. It depends on the life cycle of the brand, and that's where the difference is between just recall or versus impact.
Yeah. So this is excellent. So four very strong points here. Not all branded content is created by brands. Consumers are creating branded content as well, as Wasim said. You can't create content yourself. If you're a brand, you got to partner with other people who know how to create and curate. That's fantastic. Marketing is content. Brand is content. It's not any longer only something which is devoid from the branding elements. That's fantastic as well. And I think you got some couple of examples to give us later. We'd love to hear about that. Engaging, and the counterpoint that not every brand has to be a content producer or publisher. This is fantastic. I'm going to go back to the why. So we are not debating why content is king or not, or queen or monarch or whatever. I think we get that. My question to you first, Wasim, what is the compelling need for brands today? And both for companies like you at a global level, multinational, different geography, as well as particularly in a market like India. What is the compelling need for you today to embrace content? Number one. Related question, what consumer behavior change or shift do you see that is forcing or encouraging you to think that we must embrace content?
You see, at the Coca-Cola company, we have an increasing belief that our today and tomorrow is based on telling stories about our brands. And there are limitations in traditional formats of telling stories. And consumers don't need a message. Imagine if on that day Martin Luther King had stood and said, I have a message, or we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. He sold people a dream. If you look, and this is another example I had, which is closer home. I mean, if you look at Coca-Cola, and if we had said Coca-Cola is a great tasting beverage, we're talking to ourselves. Instead, you try and tell that through a story called The Happiness Factory. And those little characters, they come together, they come alive, and then you suddenly start to believe, hey, there is a power of storytelling. And if you genuinely believe in the power of storytelling, that's when you'll realize that the answer lies in content, it doesn't lie really in messaging. And that's the elevation that you need to do. So similarly, Thumbs Up as a brand for us in India had told its story many times over, and we had to even elevate the manner of storytelling. We went and we tied up with Khatron Ke Khiladi, and the results were fabulous for us. So we elevated the storytelling from a 60-second single format TV commercial to an 8-hour log branded content. And the results that it created for us are fabulous. So that's the reason why.
That's good. I'm going to come back to the second why after the first time. Okay. Nikhil, from the point of view of somebody who's been on the marketing side in a I would say mid-path company where you have to sell tickets and stuff to consumers, to somebody who now sits on the the other side of content and search and stuff. How do you see what? I just want to focus on. Tell us about shifts in consumer behavior you are seeing. I'm going to come back, but it's not. I want to ask you later, why is storytelling important now and why was it not 40 years ago? So to you, Nikhil, though, what is the shift in consumer behavior you are seeing from your vantage point?
So I will probably try and tell a story, just to answer that question. So just imagine yourself, you're lost in a desert and you're really, really thirsty. The first hoarding of Himalaya water that you see with Himalaya on it, and it says 10 meters ahead. Now what is it? Is it an ad? Is it content? Is it information? I think it's a lifesaver for me. But as I go along, if I start on, keep on seeing one hoarding after the other, which are telling me the same thing, then it becomes advertising. So I think what I'm seeing today, more and more consumers and users are being bombarded with so many messages, like Wasim said. That's why this storytelling, this whole business of creating content is becoming important. Because previously, marketing was about, it was in between content. Just think about it. There was an ad in between two pieces of programming. But today, content, the marketing needs to be inside the content. And I'm not talking about what Wasim is doing here. He's placing the product. So it is more about how it is, seamlessly integrated and will solve a user problem. Till it is doing that, I think users will engage. Users will themselves, you don't need to hard sell certain stuff today. Users themselves, when they have a need, they will go and find you. We just need to be in the right place and spread that awareness. So I think that's how the user behavior is changing. He is not saying, don't come knocking at my door. He's saying, just tell me you're available and you're 10 meters from here, I'll go and fetch you. So till that is happening.
Sorry, so how did user tell you don't come knocking on my door?
Because they've started ignoring you today.
All right, so you're saying users are beginning to ignore messages.
It's almost like how many, and I've heard this as soon as I go back home, this is what my wife tells me. We've just discovered the magic of HD television where you can, record or DTH with recordings. You record everything and fast forward everything. And I'm telling her, you'll very soon put me out of job. Right. Because you don't want to see advertising. But that's what user is saying. But if the content is inside.
That's why I went out of job.
Yeah.
Right. Atit, I want to take off from what Nikhil said. Are you forgetting all the discussion about content, we now want to go to consumer behavior. From your vantage point, or from where you sit in Unilever, are you seeing consumers actually ignoring messages? And if yes, tell us some tangible measures of that you have seen in the last few years?
So we are all aware of the fragmentation, proliferation, which the media industry is seeing. So the ad ignorance number has certainly gone up in the last 2-3 years, and last 2-3 years has been the biggest hit. Now, to ensure that, because you're still spending the advertising dollar and advertising rates are going up, so you're spending more, reaching less consumers, and the avoidance factor also is going up. So it's a triple whammy type of a situation, which most advertisers face. Now, do we have understanding in terms of how do we need to protect this, or how do we need to guarantee that the audiences are with you and carrying the right communication or message which you want to deliver, and then using that to buy our products? Yes, that's where this entire piece of content gets into picture. What Adi spoke about, the Coke Studio, or the current one, which is the Axe Shower Gel initiative, it is very difficult to communicate something which is a functional benefit. Now, a beverage is a beverage, it's still a soda, it's a carbonated water. A soap is a soap is a soap. You might have a pink color soap, or you have a moisturizing soap, or you have probably a Ayurvedic soap. But now to communicate what does the soap do for you, how the functional benefits are getting into the emotional part in your system, content plays a critical role.
Okay, no, I think you go beyond my point. So I'm going to come back to the question. Wasim, he's talked about consumers avoiding advertising because of a proliferation of media and fragmentation. My question to you, 2 questions, and you can tell me from your advertising as well as brand side experience. Do consumers ignore advertising because of proliferation only, or do they also ignore advertising because advertising has become boring?
Okay, nice controversial question. I don't know if any consumer sits in front of a television to watch advertising. So it never was, it never is, and it never will be. They sit there to watch a TV program. And I'm going to pick off Nikhil, and he said it right. He said there used to be a time when there used to be advertising in between content. Now there is content in between advertising. And unfortunately, that's the nature. I mean, it's the pressures of media business. It's all of that. It's where it is. So outside of the fact that it's very, 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 very crowded, it's also very, 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 very similar. So yeah, I mean, I can replace logos in 90% of those ads, and it won't make a darn difference. And that's pretty much where it's at. So quality, yes, but also quantity. And both of those things come together, and you go, hang on, if I have to talk to the same people who everybody's talking to, and if I have to make meaning about what I want to tell them, I better learn to tell it differently. And that's, I mean, I want to play if with your permission, okay, you're going to do that in seconds. But that's really why. I mean, if you got to talk to somebody who's not interested in you, then you got to find a way to talk to them.
Adi.
I actually want to give a little different perspective as somebody who's
agreement here. I want to
yeah, exactly. You know, I'm just thinking about it as obviously as a broadcaster, primarily as a broadcaster, we're in the business of creating content. But I think from a brand's perspective today, and I'll say this in front of this whole room, MTV as a business makes more money by creating or co-creating content with gentlemen like this than we do from selling airtime. Right? So typically a broadcaster's bread and butter comes from selling ad spots. Today I make more money doing the other, which is typically not what a broadcaster is supposed to be doing. So I think the challenge is really then how do brands want to see this? And Atit's point was rather than just becoming publishers, can we actually co-produce? And I think the problem happens when brands just want to create content which is an extension of their commercial. And then just becomes from a 30-second commercial, which is pretty much difficult to watch. It becomes a 1-hour program, which is just pure torture. You know, so that's where I think the filter is this. But I think brand managers or brand owners who come and say, either let's do something that's the biggest, or let's do something that's first. Then I think you're in a space where you can create some kind of impact with the audience. But if you're saying, you know, the number of clients who come and say, let's make another Roadies, you'll just be the biggest flop. You'll look like a Me Too. You'll never get that kind of success. After what we do with Wasim, a lot of clients say, let's do another music show which is about collaboration. It doesn't make sense. So you go conquer
maybe another studio, why another music show?
Yeah. So why, if either you're going to the moon and planting your flag first, or you're doing the biggest initiative, I think that's when, working together to create content.
But let me ask you a supplementary question. So there are three ways of looking at it. There is pure content that you guys used to produce, let's say, in the old days when 90% of your revenue would have been ad spots, and ad spots were irritants or part paid for the
I mean,
cost.
today all of us as media, but your break TV hours
Right.
are way less than
So
your
that was the
show
old days
TV
when the
hours.
consumers saw largely content produced by MTV and its creative team on the station, and there were 4 ad breaks where people like Wasim and Atit and me, we went and interrupted. Then there is a other side of that 2 minutes of content, which is the advertising messaging content, which was, let's say, if you agree with Wasim, is extremely irritating. Nobody really wants to watch those. And now you are talking about a fusion content, which takes elements of the brand, puts entertainment, and creates a studio and other equivalent. My question to you, again from the consumer's point, what proof do you have or evidence have you got directly from consumers that they're liking one versus other?
Liking the content or liking the brand?
The 3 types. Remember, pure content, MTV content, advertising content, which is pure play advertising, no entertainment, and the new fused content.
We do a lot of co-branded content. Not all of it works. There are a
Listen,
few
what is the
examples that
measure
work.
of working? How
So
do
the
you know?
measure of working is 2-part. One purely from the content consumption point of view. So how much of that content is consumed, not primarily only on one screen, which is TV, but how many people are liking the Facebook page, how many people are watching it off YouTube. If you're doing live events, then how many people are actually going and attending those events. So I think content consumption across various platforms is a good measure. And I think the brand measure is when I think the successful partnerships actually flow into multiple seasons. If a brand comes and just does it once, then you know it's not really worked for anybody. And I think those sustainable properties actually, that's when you see benefits. So that's when the people on the table have a more long-term view, because they're doing something which works for the consumer and not for the product. And if you're thinking about the consumer first and creating something, then I think you'll have a much more long-term play. And that's when it makes sense investing. I think a lot of brands today had to choose paying 3 crores to get Hrithik Roshan endorse their brand, or spend 3 crores to create a program. It would be interesting to know what these gentlemen would like to do.
Before we move to the second part and discuss what people are doing right now, I just want to have a quick question for Atit, because yesterday when we were speaking, you talked about interactivity. Most of what we discussed today is engagement, that people are getting irritated, they're switching off, they're ignoring, avoiding, and therefore we need to do other things. But you also spoke to interactivity. How much of the need for brands to embrace content today do you think is related to creating interactivity between the brand and the consumer as opposed to a monologue?
In my understanding, I think it's very, very critical and important. Because just taking a minute and just stepping back, why do we create Facebook fan pages? And we get 2 million, 3 million, 5 million likes. Yeah, but we also are spending, understanding, investing, and sourcing, listening habits, so you can understand what the brands are talking to you. Whether the brands are actually believing in you, what you are saying, and are they talking negative about you, are they talking positive about you? Now coming back to your question, Ravi, today if I have a regular display ad or a 30-second, it's a one-way traffic. I need to understand whether the consumer understands what I'm trying to tell them. And if they understand what I'm trying to tell them, whether it's on the emotional parameters or the functional parameters, the likelihood of him going and picking up the product vis-a-vis the competition is higher. And that's a proven data which all of us carry. So interactivity is very, very critical, because the more you interact with your consumers, the better understanding you get. That's where the insight also comes in, and one better insight, better consumer understanding leads to better communication, which he wants or she wants. So you are not creating something which is liked by the creative agency or the marketer. You're creating something, you're listening to him. You're establishing a one-to-one relationship on an interactivity basis. So it's very, very critical.
Yeah, I think there's this entire argument that's developing right now. It's around impressions versus expressions. So impressions, a one-way message. Expression is where I can share, I can like, and do something with it. And you know what? I mean, yes, we have 38 million on last count fans on Coca-Cola Facebook page globally. What's the value of that fan? And actually, after having 38 million fans, you actually go out and say, hang on, this is quite a substantial number of people who've raised their hands and say, I like you. What is the value of this person to my business? And when we did, and with all our conventional and otherwise wisdom, we found out that a person who actually clicked on that like button on Facebook is 10 times more likely to purchase a product than the person who did not. Now the person who did not click on that most likely liked our advertising, liked everything. But here is one way for us, and that's how you progress the conversation with the consumer, and that's pretty darn valuable to us.
Great, thank you. So we are just beyond the first part of discussing why it is important for brands to embrace content in today's world, and the two big, not very surprising words are engagement, interactivity, partly because of increasing ad avoidance, right? So we got that. I want to come to the what. So here's the thing what we're going to do now. I want to focus on India. You can give examples from overseas, not a problem. We all love to watch them, right? Particularly if they come with accented voices, that's fine. But from your experience, I want to hear about what marketing people and publishers are doing right now, right here in India. I don't want to get to the other part of this argument, which could be, are there two Indias? Is there an India based in the 6 cities and another India where 87% of businesses don't have a website? And so that's a separate discussion, maybe another ad tech someday. But I want to hear about what do you think, from your experience, Google's experience, what are marketing people doing today to embrace content? And we'll come later to discussing what is the nuance and essential difference between being a content sponsor and a content publisher. But that's later. So what are marketing people doing now?
So I think one of the first things that is happening is the fact that marketing people are realizing this is important. I think everything starts from the fact that whether you even know that this is what I need to do. So now at least people are realizing this is important, and if I don't do this, I will not have a great feedback from my users. So there are various things people are doing, and I think Unilever and Coke especially, and both of them are sitting here, have been doing a bunch of stuff which is about engaging people and creating content, which will then be not just about the brand, but actually there is entertainment or there is some kind of journey that they're taking the consumer through. There's one more level which was very interesting, and I was sharing with Ravi yesterday as well, is what I thought, it's a little more of a global example, but this is the Old Spice story. I don't know how many of you have seen the Old Spice ad. Wow, that's quite a bunch of you. Now the interesting thing there is that that ad came out, and they put that ad on YouTube. And that ad got millions of views. So while these are the stories that you already know of, what was interesting for me, a few weeks back, I was watching this ad and explaining something to one of my colleagues, and I realized that on that ad, there was another ad being played on the side. So imagine what's happening. That was supposed to be an advertisement, which has now become content. So if your ad or your messaging is actually worthwhile, because what they did is they took that ad and then they did some interactivity, they did, from the Twitter messages, they created another 100-odd films, which people want to come back and watch again and again. So now there are other brands who want to advertise on that. So I guess this is another kind of, content creation which is happening, which is going beyond actually pure content, which is a Coke Studio or which is the act stuff that Atit and team are doing. So I guess this is how it is moving forward, and this is what more and more brands will be trying to do as they go along.
Would you say Kolaveri is a more recent Indian example of something similar, where something is actually a promotion for a film, which is advertising, and gets viral and therefore becomes content? Is that an example?
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the best examples.
Are there any stats from Google or YouTube that you have to share about that particular?
I think that video went viral and it got about over 10 million views in like about a week's time. Now that's quite incredible. For any other media to get that kind of a views would have been difficult. But yeah, Kolaveri was just all over. It did become a murderous rage.
Adi, what are marketers doing?
I just think an interesting example of what Atit and me are doing with acts on MTV, and without
to do that much plugging.
Not plugging. I'm trying to tell you why I find it interesting. A 10-week activity, a 10-week activity broadly. They don't want the brand name even mentioned for the first 9 weeks. So they're putting all these media dollars, burning this money, with the belief that somewhere putting a brand name right in the beginning doesn't always work. Then you can smell advertising from a mile. So I think it also takes courage to believe that, okay, let's go that mile and not do it. Roadies as a show for us was successful for the first 6 seasons as a TV show. But on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe it was 6 on 10. The minute it broke into something that happens on the web, something that happens on mobile, today the affinity scores, the kind of drive we get for the property is suddenly gone 10x. So I think interactivity.
I want to ask one more question. So,
Ravi,
sorry,
if I
yeah,
can
sure.
interrupt. I think what you said was very interesting between what Levers is doing today with MTV. I think a few years back in advertising agencies, one of the common thing was whenever somebody created an ad, they said, "Yaar, ye to Levers jaisa ad hai. You know, इसमें थोड़ी creativity डालो." And when now Levers is going that way, it really makes me feel
Or
glad.
logo bada karo.
So, second question to Adi is that I want to ignore Hero Honda and Coke for a minute. Those are your flagpoles. We hear about them. Like he'll also make us hear some more later, right, offline. Give us a couple of Indian brands example. You know, typically, like you said, you wouldn't expect brands, e.g., XYZ, that in your mind, who are now embracing content and coming to you and co-creating. And I said co-creating is not what can we sponsor with our money. It's about, you know, what can we really co-create together. Are there any examples like that?
There's one of them actually put in my clip. Bajaj as an organization doesn't do any sponsorship. They have no celebrity. Their product range itself was all about never about performance. It was always about efficiency. And then they launched the Pulsar, which was seen to be as a performance bike. And rather than just saying it can go faster, they didn't have a fuel efficiency story. It was all about power. I think it was the first 200cc plus bike. But what did they do? They said rather than promoting the bike, what is the bike the best thing for? It's stunt biking. Globally, stunt biking is a regular sport. In India, it's still underground. It's typically guys who are mechanics who actually do it, but it's not coming to the youth. Let's build stunt biking as a sport and work backwards to that. So today, Pulsar, the only property that Bajaj is a sponsor of, where they have a sponsorship with, is to build stunt biking as a property. So it's a TV show, it's a ground event.
So what are you doing?
So we're in the third season. We do a 8-part reality series, which is educating people about stunt biking, finding young people, training them, and finding a stunt biking champion every year. But that's just the TV format. At the back of it, they're setting up stunt biking schools. We're getting a mentorship program going. We're taking stunt biking to colleges and educating people about it.
And how does your digital asset plug into what you're doing here?
Well, I think digital plugs into everything that all of us do.
So give an example of the Bajaj, product.
So right from putting up clips of what stunt biking is about to the 10 safety tips that you must do to actually getting people to create a subgroup saying, hey, I'm interested, what can I do to find out more? It becomes a huge place to actually, once you see that and get excited by it, to interact. And
provocative question, do you seriously push people to interact with the digital part of that? Or is it that you really want ratings for your show on TV and the digital is just for warehousing?
Stunt biking is niche. It will never get the ratings. So if you wanted to build ratings, that was the wrong show to do. So
do you have some stats to share? If the 100 people watched on TV, how many interacted?
Well, I'll give you a
online?
stat. If 100 people watch Roadies, 30 people will watch a stunt biking show.
Bajaj.
No, I'm just
Okay,
saying.
right.
Versus a regular reality show, if 100 people watch, stunt biking will be watched by 30 people.
And the TV versus digital?
Stunt Mania has got about 250,000 fans over the 3 years on Facebook. But that's been built over 3 years.
Okay, so before moving on, I want to come back to Wasim, you first. Give me one example, non-Coke, as in not Coke brand, not Coca-Cola India, that means you can't even say thumbs up, right? Example of some other brand doing what you think, even 80% of what you think Coke is doing in embracing content and engaging customers.
This was about 3 years back. Coke put a rigged up vending machine in a.
You're supposed to not do Coke.
You said not Coke India. So
Right.
in
India.
In India. So in India, I've got that AV. If you allow me to finally play that.
Oh, okay, now we'll play it.
But the example that I was giving, which was a reverse example, which is
He promised me money, so I'm waiting for my scam time.
don't give Ram ideas. But this was called the Happiness Machine, and it became such a huge hit on the internet that we actually took the content that was produced. It was just an activation that we
that's
did in
not
a
India.
college. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
And that actually got released as a TV commercial later.
Right.
But the India example is there.
But can you go an Indian example of some other brand before you go there?
For some other non-Coke brand.
Yeah. Non-company brand.
Non-competing brand.
And non-company, you're not your company, some other company.
Okay. I think the example that he's given of Bajaj is a
That's
very.
his example. Yeah, you got to earn your place on the dais.
I am with you on that. I just am very inward looking. So.
Oh, okay. So we'll come back. We'll play the 30-minute Wasim video. 30 minutes, right? And we'll take a commercial break in between to have lunch.
With 288 million young people, India is the world's youngest country. So the big challenge for Brand Coke was to recruit teams by strengthening brand love. But performing with this highly aware and hard-to-please audience requires some fresh thinking. We figured that though the young in India were so kids about soft drinks, there was one thing they loved unanimously: music. Which is how the idea of launching Coke Studio in India started taking shape. Music consumption in India was largely limited to Bollywood numbers. So the big question was, how can Coke Studio music be unique and memorable? Thanks to the digital age, the Indian teenager was getting interested in a wider variety of musical genres, from international pop, rock to world music. Also, we saw a huge and untapped opportunity in India's incredibly rich musical diversity, which finally helped us articulate Coke Studio's reason for existence in India: to bring India's diverse musical genres together to release happiness. Coke Studio's new purpose served as a guiding light in getting the right mix of popular, upcoming, and unknown yet promising names. This purpose helped Coke Studio create an altogether new musical genre, a brand of fusion music that was a true celebration of India's musical diversity.